Okay, normally, so as this gentleman was saying, I'm French originally. I've been here for 23 years now. I work for a company called WSO2. Anyone knows WSO2? Few people. We have to work on our marketing, okay? We've been around for 20 years, so you should know about us. We're one of the only left, I think, true open source companies. By true, I mean not the ones that make you pay for the extra features. So we have full products, API management, integration, and identity, and that's why I'm here today. I'm a field CTO at WSO2. I also worked a lot on API security. You may see my name a lot in LinkedIn doing API security talks. So we'll talk about security quite a bit. Okay, and that's me. If you find, looking for me, usually my handle anywhere is Isabell Mauny. All right, so why are we here? We're here to talk about authentication, right? And there is not a day that passes when I was at the company I founded before. We had this newsletter called APIsecurity.io. We still have that. And every single week we had a newsletter with 2-3 breaches and problems around password management and linking passwords and breaches and records being lost and stolen every single week. Okay, this is from May last year. Okay, it's a university. This is touching absolutely everyone. So we do have a lot of passwords. We'll talk about this in a second, and a lot of data which is somewhere in what they call the dark web. Anybody gone to the dark web? You can say, right? If you connect to Tor and this kind of things. There's like a whole new word that some of us know about, others don't, where you can find a lot of information, right? And so you have all this data. And of course, right, there's a lot of data. Now, has anyone gone recently, if not, you really should do that, to a site called I've Been Pwned from a gentleman called Troy Hunt. What this gentleman is doing is gathering all the breaches, right, putting them in a single place so you can put your email, and then you get surprises like me when I was preparing this talk. So as I said, I'm French. In France, we have a line, something like Decathlon, in the rest of the world called Sport 2000, as you see here. And then I realized that my email, private email, had been leaked as part of a breach. And also this other thing, French citizens in general. So there's a gentleman or a lady, we don't know, somebody has been dedicating a lot of time, most likely, to take all the data from all the breaches that ever happened to French citizens and gather them in a single database for everybody to use, right? That's the number 2 in here. So even device information is in there. So in this website, there's already something like 15 billion, right? That's 9 zeros, accounts that have been leaked. A lot of data, as I said, right? And of course, we're still not very good at this. On using passwords that actually are good. So frankly, what I'm most surprised about is not so much that people still use those passwords, is where the heck do they use those passwords? Because everywhere I go, I cannot put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't work, right? We have all those rules that we have to follow for our passwords. But still, those are still the main, ones. And something, in Spain, you have some specific ones, a lot of Alejandro cities of the, name of cities. And I'm actually very surprised not to see Real Madrid and Barcelona is there. Could be the city or something else, right? Inside that list. So we're not very good at inventing passwords either. So passwords are definitely a problem, right? Now, you, as developers, that's a bit the goal of this talk, right, is you have to create an application, and you have to, of course, protect this application by some kind of authentication. How are you going to do it, right? And the goal of this session is really to see how do we balance 2 things, security and user convenience, right? User experience. So if you take this example of this door, this could be Fort Knox, right? It could be the Banco of España, the door to the reserve of the gold, which is supposedly there in the Castellana. Maybe, okay? So if you live, I said that I'm French, I'm from a very small village in France, 500 people, I never close my door. I'm sure there are people here from small cities in Spain, you go back to your little pueblo, right? And you don't close the door either, but when you come back to Madrid, you do close the door, and maybe you have 3 locks, and maybe you have an alarm, and you have, some protection, because your sense of risk that something may happen is much higher here than it would be in your small village, right? So you adapt the security. You wouldn't put like 3 locks and an alarm and whatever on your small, and you wouldn't invest that in your house, in your little village. But you do that in your city, right? Because you evaluate the risk. This is the same thing for everything. When we look at security, the first thing you have to evaluate is, what is the risk, right? What is the risk with this application? What happens if somebody could do some social engineering to your boss, which are things that happen. Remember the Twitter boss that got taken like this through social engineering? That's what all this data, by the way, you find in Have Been Found that has been stolen. You wouldn't say, why are they stealing all this data? What is that good for, right? Passwords, okay, we get it. We put it in the dictionary, we replay dictionaries, we try the password, let's see if it works. But all the rest of the data, what is that for? It's mainly for phishing and social engineering, right? So that if I send you an SMS or WhatsApp or an email asking you to do something which is going to redirect you to a fake Facebook, a fake bank, a fake whatever, right? The more I know about you, the more that information and that email is going to sound real to you, right? Well, how my bank? Of course, it has to be my bank. They know everything about me. They know my bank, they know my this, they know my that. What do they know? Because it's on the dark web, right? And that's how they found this information. So we have to adapt to risk. Now, convenience. Obviously, if you put 3 locks on your door, it takes you more time to open the door than if you just open the door, right? It's the same thing for the convenience of the users. It's exactly the same principle. Now let's talk about our friend CAPTCHA. Don't you love CAPTCHAs? Right? Where are the street signs? Bit everywhere, okay? And then you can't get it wrong, right? There's probably one of those squares which is not a street sign. Which one? That's the problem, right? This one is kind of famous in the US because this one here, is that supposed to work? No, it's not working, right? This block here, which is a mailbox in the US, that's the way mailboxes are in the US. Actually, the CAPTCHA thinks this is a parking meter. So people don't click this and they fail, right? And then you have this thing that we don't see much anymore, that we used to use glasses and Zoom and listen to the audio and everything, right? And it's like, right, can't really do this. Now, I have a question for you. Did you know that CAPTCHA is actually an acronym? So you should actually always write it in capital letters. Now, what does it stand for? Now, 2 of those proposals come from Claude AI, Anthropic engine, which apparently has a great sense of humor. I'll let you decide it. CAPTCHA, a medically absurd puzzle that completely halts access. Not bad. Okay, number 2. Completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and human apart. Number 3, completely arbitrary puzzle, typically causing huge anxiety, right? So what's the real one? Right, which I don't think is the best one, frankly, but okay. And now our friend from Claude is very nice. It says, if you fail at this, think you're part of a greater experiment for human determination. It's really good at humor, that thing. All right, so CAPTCHA, no good. Now, what is the Turing test? Turing test was invented by Mr. Great Alan Turing, obviously, in the 50s. This gentleman was like an absolute genius, right? Wonder what this gentleman would do now if he could live these times. It would be incredible. Unfortunately, he left too soon. But what he defined is a Turing test, which is what the CAPTCHA is all about. And what the idea is to say, if a human is talking to 2 things, it doesn't know if it's another human or if it's a machine. if they fail to identify more than 50% of the time that what they're actually talking to, interacting with, is actually a machine, then you fail the test, right? Well, guess what? GPT passed the test. What does that mean? That means that machines, now, doesn't mean it's more intelligent than us, it just means, and actually, if you read that article, it's very interesting. The way it passed the test is by tricking a human into responding in its place. That's the way it did it. It's very interesting, right? And also, bots are actually much better at resolving CAPTCHAs than humans are, because we get frustrated and bots don't get frustrated, right? And they pass much faster and better than us. So CAPTCHA, forget about it, not a good option for authentication. Now, okay, no CAPTCHA, but we want some multi-factor authentication, right? Because if somebody indeed has stolen my user ID, my passwords, and they're replaying it, I need something else to prove, are you the person you say you are? Show me something, right? So MFA really, for me, is not an option anymore. Actually, I don't know, recently, did you go to a website that made MFA mandatory? As I did. Right? Usually it was an option. Now more and more, it's not an option. You have to put an authenticator, a TOTP, an SMS, whatever it is. You have to do it, right? So it's not an option anymore. So what options do we have today, right? If we look at convenience and security, bottom and the right, we have passwords, right? So as we said, from a security standpoint, no good. Now, from a convenience standpoint, anybody can fill a form that has a user ID and a password. Your grandma can do it, right? You have to think about who is going to use your application. That's easy to do. Now, from an inconvenience point of view, the problem is not the password, the problem is the password management, right? As this gentleman yesterday from Telefonica was saying in the main event, either you have one big password that follows all the rules and this is the one you put everywhere, bad idea. But it's simple, right? Or you have a big, bad, super duper password to a password manager where all your passwords are, right? That's basically, but is your grandmother capable of doing that? Probably not, right? Unless you help her every single weekend, right? So that's passwords. So what do we want to do? What are the two things? Passwords, but we need an MFA, or what we are going to look at as well is passwordless, which is taking more and more importance now. Those are our options. Okay, so let's talk about password and MFA. What are we going to ask people to give us? As ever, right? Something they know, something they possess, and something they have, basically. Something, a characteristic of the person. It can be a PIN, it can be, okay, let me do you guys are professionals, right? All of you. How many of you have a FIDO key, like a UB key or something, to connect to GitHub, for example? Ouch. Okay, invest $50, 50 euros, and get that, right? So you generate SSH keys, you connect to GitHub, this is your code is, you have to protect it better than that. You have that single key with you and you use it to connect to your mail, to everything, right? You need that. As, again, my mother or my grandmother will not be able to use this, but as professionals, this should kind of be a must, right? So a card, some coordinates, something. Okay. I'm sorry. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay, so physical device, as we said. So, demo time. So this was supposed to be a live demo. I'm very sorry, but yesterday I got some contrasting news about the network and how it would work. Since I have to receive an email, I actually recorded this. And I did this yesterday, so you can see what it is. So, what is this? This is the Bank of Asgard. So our WSO2 product is called Asgardeo, therefore the Bank of Asgard. So what we're going to do here is to open a business account, right? So I'm a BizCode user. I'm going to go and fetch a nice email that I can use so I can receive an email later. Put a nice password that matches all the requirements, right? My name, date of birth, where I live. Should type faster. Okay. And then we'll create an account, a business account, right? And then I want to show you a bit of the experience we could give very simply to a user. So behind the scenes of this is actually, as you can imagine, the WSO2 identity server product, right? So that's it. Created an account, very easy bank, bim bam, you get an account, right? Put your password, and then it's going to ask me, how do I want to log in? Do I want to log in with an email TP, or do I want to do TOTP, which is like the typical authenticator thing, right? So let's do email. I'm going to go and receive the typical email with my code. You've all seen that before. Put that in. Okay. And then log in into the bank, which is a wonderful bank because it gives you plenty of money when you start a new account. Okay. And then I will set up the TOTP, the typical thing with scan a QR. We have an app on my phone. It's going to give me this wonderful token. I set it up, I'm all good. This is probably what is missing here from, if you don't do this for real, I'm sure you've seen that, is to give people backup codes, right? You should generate for them some like 5, 10 backup codes. And actually what I see more and more as well is people asking for the first backup code just to make sure people actually save them, right? So now if I'm logging again, then I will be able to sign in with my TOTP, which is a typical 6-digit thing, right? This is very easy to do. Most of the identity systems today on the market will give you very easy way to do that. We even have, in our case, some AI tools to generate those pictures. You know, in 2 hours, you can get this done, right? That needs to be super easy to do. So those are the basics. One thing we've done in that demo, though, is if I log in and I log in again, and it's going to say, oh, well, your preferred way is probably TOTP. So you see, it only shows me TOTP now. It doesn't show me other options, right? So you use the preferences of the user to define, you know, what is the best way for them to actually log in, whatever they're actually preferring, right? That's it. That's my first little bit of Bank of Asgard. Very simple things. And then we'll continue. Now, that flow, very typical. I'm sure you've seen that in many, many applications, right? Now, what is the problem with that flow? The problem with that flow is right now, the way it is written, it is static, right? So every time I'm going to log in, I'm going to ask the same thing from people, the exact same steps, right? Now, in reality, that's not what we want. Because remember what I said about the door and the locks and everything? What we want is to adapt what we are going to ask people from that risk, right? So it's not the same, for example, if I take the bank I have in Spain, what they do is you log in actually with a very simple, we could say the password, actually in my password manager, I always have this at the red at the top saying your password is weak because the password is actually 6 digits. That's what they accept, right? So the password is very weak, but every time, once I'm in, the only thing I can do is actually to look at my account. So if somebody finds that password, well, that PIN, more than a password, it's a PIN. If somebody gets in with this PIN, the only thing they'll be able to do is see how much money I have. That's it. Now the next, every time I want to do something else, depending on what I want to do, then they will ask me for more information, right? That's adaptive security. What can we do? Well, another example. So WSO2 is actually a company which is rooted in Sri Lanka, right? So whenever I travel to Sri Lanka, everywhere where the security is well done on some apps, I get challenged to more information, right? Because the behavior, like normally I'm connecting from France or from Spain, I never connect from Sri Lanka. So it says, whoa, what is she doing? That's like kind of far away too. It's like, what is she doing up there connecting to her bank? Is that really her? So they will be asking me extra information. Maybe they'll ask me for another TP factor, right? So geolocation is kind of an obvious one. If you're not connecting from your regular device, I'm sure you've seen that as well. When you connect from a new computer, it will be asking some extra things wherever you are. It can be, of course, AI. So behavior analytics is a big part of this. So, for example, some people, you know, like, I know my husband does that, like every morning, wakes up, go to the bank, open the page, blah, 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 always the same time, more or less, 8:30. It's like if you look at his pattern of usage of the system, it will be very regular, right? So if suddenly is doing that at 3 in the morning, something is wrong, right? That's behavior analysis. So you could connect to an external system that will give you some context. In the end, the idea is you have an extra context which is going to allow you to take a decision on how you want to perform the authentication, right? It can be claims. Typical thing is you're trying to, like what I said about my bank, right? Depending on who is actually connecting to a system, then you're going to ask for extra information because you're trying to access functionality which is related to maybe a specific role, right? That's another thing. And something that we actually integrate with that I find very interesting, which is typing DNA. So I don't know if you know that, but we all type in a different way, in a different rhythm, how strong we type, the fingers we do. This kind of creates a unique signature of typing. Why is this useful? The typical scenario, you're in the office, you leave your computer open. Don't do that, right? At the Verso 2, we have people from security passing by, and you come back and your computer is gone, if you have done this, right? So don't do that, but if you do, and somebody tries to get in, or maybe they know your password for some reason, like as Javier was saying yesterday from Telefonica, the shoulder watch, like somebody watching over you and they know your password to open your computer. When they type your password, even if they know it, they are not going to type it the same way you type it. And therefore, the connection should be refused. This is a company that does that. We have an integration with this. That's another option, right? And I'm sure there are more, but those are the main 4 ones. So depending on that, you're going to take a decision. Again, we're back to evaluating risk. So what is the risk that this might not be the right person? There is something here fishy, we don't know. Okay, so we're going to enforce another MFA, for example. Or you could say, whoa, big problem here, I don't want to take any risk. At the risk, sorry for the pun, at the risk of maybe pissing off the user, so the user is not happy because you didn't let them through and they are the right user, right? So you evaluated a risk that is not there. But sometimes it's better to do that to protect the users from themselves than letting them in, right? So if you evaluate the risk to be high, well, you basically block the authentication. This happened to me once also traveling, I don't know where I couldn't pay anything with my credit card anymore, which was not a good idea at the time. It gave me a lot of problems. But on the other hand, I prefer that than my card being misused by somebody who was not me, right? So I accepted the risk and the decision has been taken. Okay, so we're back on demo time. Now we're back to our Bank of Asgard, but we are going this time to create a personal account. So we create a personal banking account. The first steps are pretty much the same. I'll put my name, perso code, that's what I put, yeah. The same email, because I have only one email in here. Copy pasting, the same password. We don't need to do that, but right? It was the same password. Okay, first name, last name, the country. All right, and then what we're going to do here is once I've created that account, we're going to set up the first thing we're going to do. In this account, I can set up a passkey, right? So passkey is like your Face ID on the iPhone or other phones, is your finger on the reader on your computer, or like the keys that I was talking about, the physical keys, which I do recommend for professional thing as well, because the advantage of that is it's not attached to your phone, right? If you have a problem with your phone, how many of you have their lives on their phone, right? Same people, do you have a backup of your phone? If you lose your phone tomorrow or it's being stolen, you're gonna be in trouble. Do a backup, okay? All right, so I've registered, perso code, putting my password. Here I have the sign with the passkey, signing in, boom, I put the finger, okay? So that's easy enough. Now, what I'm going to do is just to simulate that I'm in another country. I'm going to edit my profile and say that I'm actually from France, okay? Just to make it easier. And save my account. So now, if I log out and I log in again, as you will see, I'll just put my user, which is my perso code. I will log in with the key, with my finger of my computer, sign with the pass key, right? All good. But now I'm being asked for an OTP, right? An extra step because, well, I'm not connecting from the country I'm supposed to be in, right? And then I'm received the same thing. I'll put it in, and that will give you some extra information here, okay? And log out. All right. Now, let's talk about security a bit. I don't know if you've seen that. Actually, we're using email and SMS because, again, it's easy. Anyone can receive an SMS and read it. Again, back to your mom or your grandma, right? That's very easy to do. You don't need a smartphone. You don't need something, you can have a normal phone. By the way, this is also very important. I forgot to mention this when we talked about risk and adapting the authentication to the risk, but also you have to adapt to the users, right? There is this big, digital breach. Some people, not everybody can have the latest iPhone, and some people just have a very simple Nokia. If you guys know Leo Harlem, he always goes on shows saying he has this very old Nokia that can last for 1 week, the battery, right? That guy, he can't do TOTP. That doesn't work. Well, his only option is SMS. So you have to plan for that. Like, who are going to be the users of my application? And SMS is something you're going to need it probably as a backup always, but it shouldn't be the preferred one. There's multiple. So again, when you get the presentation, you'll see there is a link here. There's an entire article on why. But there's two things, right? A, because SMS is obviously attached to a specific phone, so if you're traveling or something, you can't receive SMS for some reason, then you need that connection, right, to make it work, which is not the case for TOTPs because it's a calculation that happens on your phone, but it doesn't need a connection to work, right? That's one of the key advantages. But more importantly, and that's why the NIST and the FBI have said this is not a good idea anymore and they refuse it as a first option, is because of attacks, again. So it's this thing called SIM swapping. The idea being that through social engineering, then somebody can call your Vodafone, your France Telecom, whatever, of your carrier provider, and convince them that you have lost your phone, that they need to issue a new SIM to you, right? How will they be able to do that? They'll be able to do that because of all this information they found about you in the dark web again, right? So if somebody is making some, okay, tell me the name of your bank, tell me this, tell me that, or not, they know because that data has been stolen before, right? So again, it's back on the risk. What is the risk that somebody is going to do that to you? Probably depends where you work, who you are. Are you a high target for this type of attacks, right? Again, we're back to risk and evaluating that risk. But in general, forget about SMS as the first option, okay? That's kind of the recommendation today. The other thing which is very important, when we authenticate, what do? We issue a token, right? We issue a session ID of some sort. So one of the key problems we found as well here is to say, what if an attacker can create session IDs because they understand the algorithm behind it, right? Because you don't have enough entropy, enough complexity in the algorithm that generates a session ID, right? So developer tools are the friend of any hacker. Well, they'll go check what it is that's being created. They'll use other tools, of course, but it's very easy to see what's happening behind the scenes, right? So if a hacker can forget about putting a user ID and a password, if a hacker can forge session IDs or forge tokens that look totally okay to you, game over, right? That's easy. So you have to be careful about, there's plenty of, you guys know OWASP, right? The foundation that does the top 10 and everything. There's tons of recommendations on this, on best practices for different types of code and frameworks on how to do this correctly. But be careful about that, right? The same is true, by the way, of OAuth tokens. So if you do an OAuth dance, as I call it, to generate a token that then allows you to access APIs, for example, same problem. If I can create tokens on myself because you did something wrong, then that's it. The door of the castle is open to me, right? So session ID entropy. Same thing is true of codes. I don't know if you've seen that tendency as well very recently, until very like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even less. The codes you were receiving through an email, SMS, like we did in the demos, were 4 digits, right? So 4 digits and only digits. It's only 10,000 combinations. That is nothing. A computer going through 10,000 combinations over, let's say I want to hack your password reset endpoint in any application, right? We all need that, right? We all have a password reset. A lot of customers, companies, what they do, I click on password reset, I have to put my email, great. They're gonna send me something, an SMS, to say, hey, put that SMS to prove it's really you trying to do a password reset, right? Up to very recently, people were sending a 4-digit. Now, if I'm a hacker, is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pull my credit card, won't be very expensive. I'm gonna go to my favorite hyperscaler, Microsoft, blah, 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 whichever, Google, Amazon, and I'm going to spawn very easily 100 machines, right? It's gonna cost me nothing because I only need them for 5 minutes. Each of them, I'm gonna give them, I would take 10,000, divide it, every bit of you, try and see if you can get in, right? Very easy. Same thing. So 10,000, too easy. 6 digits, 1 million, not so hard. It's just going to take a little bit more time or more machines, right? So you have to be careful. Now, what you're seeing more and more as well is mixing digits and letters. Because obviously, if you take letters, 26 plus the digits, that's much more combinations. That's going to be harder to go through, right? And now what you really have to do here is to reduce the time you allow to somebody to actually enter. That window you give to people, you say, you have 10 minutes to put a code. That's a lot. No, that's not a lot of time in human time. That is a lot of time in computer time. I can do a lot of things in 10 minutes, such as walking this 1 million combinations very easily, right? So think about either or both, increase the entropy of that code and or reduce the time that you give to people to actually enter that code, right? So you don't give that window of opportunity for hackers to actually guess that, because now if they can actually, again, obviously, if they can get to the password reset and reset the password, again, it's game over, right? That's it. They've taken the account. So you have to be careful about this. Now, another thing, I've put this because of my, security story, right? This is, again, convenience versus security. You log into a system, and it makes a different answer if the email already exists than if it doesn't. This is really bad. Don't do that, right? So I should not be able to know. So this is an example. I removed the name of the company. It's in French as well, so you wouldn't, they will know, but if they see this presentation. And here it says on the right, password required, which means that behind the scenes, I've put my email and the system says, oh, we know that user, so we're gonna ask her for her password. That's what happens if I'm already in the system. If I am not in the system, sorry, it's gonna say that. Oh, you're not in the system, let's create an account. So I know for convenience, I actually reported this problem to those guys, and they told me, well, for convenience for the user, we prefer to leave it this way, right? And that's what Facebook is doing, whatever they said. So, okay, fine, right? But what should we do here is to say, if you are a user of that system, you're gonna receive an email, right? And you should log in now, you shouldn't try to do anything else. But the response from a UI, from a backend perspective, the response should be absolutely the same. So as a hacker, I cannot know, and I cannot create a dictionary of emails and try to find all the emails that actually are in your system. Here it's very easy. If I have 100 emails, 1,000, 10,000. I'll just call that endpoint. I'll get to 200 password required. Tick. Okay, I know those emails are in the system. Now I can work on doing data dictionary attacks with well-known passwords or the passwords I found on the system, right? So that's also very important. All right, and so be careful of that. I know it's the same, by the way, for APIs, right? When actually those guys, if you call their APIs directly, when you send them an email that already exists, it sends you a 409, which means conflict. Very clear, right? No, don't do that. I must not know, right? So you have to find other ways to be friendly to your existing users, which are not to inform, whoever is trying to hack the system, right? That's important. Now, I'm going to close with something called verifiable credentials. Have you guys heard about this? You know what that is? Okay. All right. So this is going to change, I think, our life as citizens. And why I'm talking about this right now, because if you're building applications and you want to do authentication, this is something you will have to worry about, right? So this is all about decentralized identity, what this is all about. When we started all of this in the 80s, 90s, right? To create, whenever you were going to a new application, a new system, what did you have to do? Create a new user, create a new password, therefore the problem of copying the same big password everywhere, right? And you had the same users and users and users and users. I have I think 400 entries in my password manager right now, right? Between the personal and the enterprise ones. Okay, so not ideal from a security standpoint because people reuse password, and not ideal from a security user experience point of view because again, I have to create new accounts all the time. So what did we do? We said, okay, well, people are in Facebook or in LinkedIn or in other systems, so we're going to give them a button that says sign in with, right? Sign in with Google, sign in with this, sign in with that. Much easier for people. So from a user experience, this is much better because I don't need to have a separate account for all those systems. However, the problem is, from a security standpoint, well, if somebody now takes over my Google account, obviously they have access to everything that I was accessing to with my Google account. So that's a problem. And privacy, why is that bad? Because, so this is also something to look at. Whenever you connect and say sign in with Google, with this, with that, pops up a window that says, this app would like to have access to. Right? And a lot of people are asking me, why don't you have Calendly? That's why. Because when I connect to this, it's asking me to get access to my entire Google account. I'm sorry, no, right? But you have to read it. You really have to read what those guys are asking for, right? And once you have given those permissions, and obviously, if you say no, there's no option to select what you want them to access to. Either you say yes and they have access, or you say no and you don't log in with Google. No other option. This is where self-sovereign identity is coming into the picture. The idea is we have identities that we store on our phones, right? And we control what we want those applications to see. So if you have an identity with 20 different attributes, then you can select and say, well, for that specific thing, I only want to show 3 and nothing else. Right? I don't want to show the 10. I only want to show 3. So you get the control, right? So the reason I'm saying this is because there is this huge European project right now across 27 countries to harmonize how we as EU citizens are going to access everything through verifiable credentials. So the ultimate idea is we will have a wallet on our phone with pretty much everything. You have to open a bank account and they're asking you for, a proof of where you live, a proof of your studies or where you work or whatever. Everything in a single app. You go to the bank, the idea, right, is you go to the bank, you say you want to onboard, they say I need this, 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 and that. You snap, I'm going to show you, right, there, you snap a QR and off we go. That's the idea, right? So, and this is already happening. So here in Spain, on the social security system, for example, you have this new box that just appeared that says access to EU citizens. And so here I could click and log in with my verifiable credential, which is my passport, for example, from France into a Spanish system. Okay? So that's the promise. Now, why I'm saying this is because this is on top of us. It's not that far away that we will have to have those wallets. So if you're implementing applications, very soon, you will have to support something like this. On top of the connect with Apple, Google, maybe with the, I don't know if you guys are using the EU certificate from Spain, for example, right, from FNMT, a new button that says connect to ID wallet. So you can onboard system this way. Because every single citizen will have this on their phones. So this is something we will have to support, okay? And it's on top of us, right? It's like 2026 is like a year and not even a half from now, right? And then end of 2027, all the businesses will have to accept, a lot of businesses will have to accept those credentials. So this is something to start thinking about right now. It's pretty mature. There are options. There's a great company here in Spain called Gattaca, who's actually doing this. They have a very nice demo site. You can go and experiment with it. So you get a feel for what it looks like and what the experience of the users will actually be. But think about this as you create your new authentication systems. This is something we'll have to, support very quickly, okay? All right, and to close on, key takeaways, forget CAPTCHAs. Be careful of SMS, right? Passkeys are the best, depending on your audience. That's important. Authenticators, adapt security, and just keep cool, but be paranoid. That's the key thing to security. All right, thank you very much for your time.